and fear.
I just watched The Island of Dr. Moreau.
So before you all start making excuses for this movie, let's agree up front that there were oodles of potential for this movie to actually kick some ass. In fact, when I first heard about The Island of Dr. Moreau, it felt like they were assembling like the perfect band.
We're putting the band back together.
Forget it. No way.
You know, you've got a song penned by rock legend H.G. Wells, with music arranged and produced by veteran hitmaker John Frankenheimer, all thrown into a studio together with an awesome ensemble of musical talent. You've got Marlon Brando there on lead vocals, you've got David Thewlis on lead guitar, Val Kilmer on keyboards, and master percussionist Stan Winston on the old pigskins. But somehow this assemblage of powerful talent created some kind of great conjunction of shitness that overwhelmed the filmic universe and produced what is now known as one of the biggest disasters in film history. Val Kilmer had wife troubles, Marlon Brando was his usual fuckwit self, and Richard Stanley, the writer-director who had fought to get this movie made for a shit bunch of years, managed to get himself fired for incompetence 4 days into filming, and blah, 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 and oh, it fucking rained and shit and boo fucking who, woe to me, excuses, excuses, excuses.
Derek, it's just a
I don't want to hear your excuses.
But fuck all that, a movie is a movie, right? It has to stand on its own 2 feet, just like Veronica did in her heels punching holes in my scrotum like wet tissue paper. You don't get a fucking pass because a movie is hard to make. All movies are hard to make. How does Val Kilmer's problems with his wife excuse the fact that the set designers hooked up a bag of piss to the IV in this scene? How does Brando having a minor psychotic break and insisting on wearing ghost face makeup and silly hats excuse the fact that there's a character that looks exactly like Freddy Krueger's left testicle? Oh, and pray tell, how the fuck does having the previously fired director running around the set in a hooded cloak and latex dog mask stalking people with a fire axe excuse abysmal CGI like this? You know, if it really was just all too hard, maybe they should have considered putting the poor movie out of its misery.
Father?
Because when you watch Moreau, it's almost hard to believe the movie had a greenlit budget and a script no matter how distracted the people working on it became. For instance, the bit where the werewolf from Harry Potter notices the communication tower and Iceman from Top Gun says,
The problem is nobody can fix it but me, and it was down before we left.
I mean, we all love a bit of foreshadowing, but that's akin to having chicks in tight dresses walking up and down the cinema aisles, handing out the last dozen pages of the script. And yes, I know that's sexist, but I sat through The Island of Dr. Moreau for this, so please don't begrudge me the chicks in tight dresses, alright? Then there's the bit where the dude holds a flower in his mouth and then pins it on the other dude. I mean, I'm no homophobic, but to me it's weird when a dude pins a spit-covered flower on another dude, no matter what the context. Point being, all these things were in the script. They weren't made up when everyone arrived on set. They were all planned and storyboarded well in advance and deliberately included in the movie. I mean, sure, you could probably blame the switch of directors for a couple of small things like the subtle inconsistencies in tone. And make no mistake, this movie switches between intellectual sci-fi, campy comedy, and hardcore horror more often than the ball-faced guy has to clean his chin hairs. But if you're going to engage Stan Winston to turn up to do a bunch of complicated makeup effects, you pretty much got to follow the plan. And you just knew the plan was something they didn't want to screw up because Moreau was one of the first films to really normalize the human genetic engineering agenda. That's right, peeps. You just know they're fucking with your genetics like mad scientists in an alien lab. Why wouldn't they? Their doctrine is to do whatever necessary to achieve their goals. They don't follow the rules. Fuck, they wrote the rules. They'll use whatever tools they can to keep a subservient inferior under their control, splicing and dicing our DNA, putting shit in the water, spraying chemtrails in the skies, and sucking all the nutrients out of our food. You want to fight back? You won't have the strength, as you'll be reduced to a hunchback halfling with the intellectual capacity of a dengue-ridden mosquito, with no will or motivation to resist the brutal, tyrannical, neo-feudalist government they're planning to inflict upon us. I don't know, maybe the movie was better than we all think. I mean, I suppose if you took a big enough hit of wacky tobacco,
Why don't you smoke this?
you could argue it preaches a valuable message of tolerance in the face of physical differences. I guess the direction wasn't that bad. He managed to produce one of the best Marlon Brando impersonations I've seen in a while. Admittedly, it's a bit weird that it was actually Marlon Brando himself doing it, but it's a Marlon Brando impersonation still. And I guess Stan Winston did a decent job under the circumstances. With a mere 14 inches of makeup and prosthetics, he managed to transform Ron Perlman into a guy that looks almost exactly like Ron Perlman. I don't know, maybe the world just wasn't quite ready for a campy version of Planet of the Apes. Maybe give it 10 more years, Stanley. By then, Hollywood might have imploded to the point this kind of jumbled tripe will be viewed as a breath of fresh air. If I could just make one suggestion, a quick tweak to the soundtrack.
The greatest magicians have something to learn from Mr. Mistopheles' conjuring turn. And we all say, oh, well, I never was there ever a cat so clever as a magical man.
The Island of Dr. Moreau. 1 star for special makeup effects.
If you like this video, click like. That's what that fucking button's for. If you want to see more, click subscribe. That's what that fucking button's for. Otherwise, go about your day. I don't care.